I'm not big on chatting online, typing things out. I'd rather have a dialogue, and I think people learn the best by hearing dialogue instead of monologues. But can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am Jewish, born Jewish. If you want to get into background, my parents were raised conservative. I went to a conservative shul until I was about 12-ish, but I was always in an Orthodox school. We later moved to Greater Muncie, as it's called, more religious community, more Orthodox. I didn't go to yeshiva after high school. Instead, I learned in Far Rockaway at a very particular yeshiva for 2 years, and I live in Muncie now.
Great. I've been to Muncie many times, love Evergreen, daven at the Vishnuster Shul, the castle, awesome place. I converted around 20 years ago, almost 25 years ago, and I did learn in yeshiva. I was an Aish in Israel. I also learned some in Or Sameach. I basically discuss religious topics. Like I said, people learn the most by hearing dialogue, and this is why I like interviewing people and just getting their perspective in the most respectful way possible. So about this topic, the notion of the Bnei Noach, can you explain your perspective about those who keep the Sheva Mitzvot and their place, not just in this world, but in a possible world to come?
Sure. As I understand it, and as it was explained to me by my Rebbeim and through my study of Torah, the idea of the Torah is that human beings, all humans, exist with certain natural predispositions that are problematic. They're troublesome. They result in a non-enjoyable, a detrimental lifestyle. It results in destruction. It results in pain. The Torah is a system given to man by God that assists us in how to live properly and enjoy the beautiful world which he created. So that came with two different systems that existed together, the Ben Noach system and the Ben Yisrael system. And the original system was really Adam. He was supposed to be his own person figuring out the world. He engaged in hate, and within a couple generations, you had Dor Enosh inventing Avodah Zarah, and the nations of the world were lost. All of humanity even led to complete destruction with Noach, and eventually led to a very low state where people were inventing false notions of how to understand the world around them. Except Avram Avinu was created. He came about, and he really developed this amazing system of understanding that there's really only one God. There aren't multiple forces, but rather one singular force that created the universe. And through a study of that thing, he wanted to teach the entire world. He wanted everyone to understand these concepts. And it was, God agreed with him, and he made a special promise with him. He said, you are correct in your application, and as a result, there will be a special nation which is created through you that will function as this light unto the nations, to be a teacher that exists and has the most pure, fundamental understanding of living the proper lifestyle. And the other nations of the world, which as of now have pretty much functioned under the 7 mitzvos, now they will look to you and they will understand how to be good people and enjoy this world. Now, the reason I put it that way is to say the 7 mitzvos are not a lesser version of the Torah. In some ways, the 7 mitzvos are equal to the Torah. They're really just trying to get humans to live like human beings. The Torah is a much more advanced, much more nuanced and particularized way to live like a proper human being. And the Ben Noach system is a sort of simple Rashi Tevos of, okay, if you've got these 7 and you really, really think into the universe that exists, these 7 will preserve you such that the world is not destroyed. And they will slowly be able to develop like Aristotle or like Avram Avinu to understand the universe. So nobody would not benefit from the Torah. It is a great system which helps and allows us all to understand the universe beautifully. However, it is easier to understand the universe and to function comfortably within it with the Torah system than it is without.
I think that's a great explanation. However, where I would differ is between what actually appears in Torah B'Ktav and what's later known as Midrash or Agartha. Let me ask you the question. Are there any Midrashim that you don't take literally?
Oh, yes, of course.
How do you pick and choose between those Midrashim?
Well, I don't particularly focus on Midrash per se. I don't think that that's the most useful derech. My particular derech is more so to focus on the exact law as it's given over, because that's a clearer line. You can say, this is a sukkah, this is not a sukkah. So, too, you can say, how do I take care of the ger, the yasam, the almana? Chazal have interpreted this is, this isn't. As a result, I would say that if you focus on the Midrashim, you could get a little distorted. So I wouldn't hold...
Well, the reason I ask you this question is around 70% of everything you said is Agartha. In other words, the whole notion, as brought down in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, the Rambam of Enosh, is all Agartha. The notion that 6 laws are given to Adam and the last law was given to Noach is Agartha. What is halacha is that the Beis Din Gadol, the Sanhedrin, adjudicates Gentiles living on Jewish land by these 7 laws. They're decapitated for breaking any one of these laws with only one witness and no pre-warning. So that's distinguishing halacha from medrash. Now, midrashim are to be used amongst Klal Yisrael. We're not supposed to teach this to Gentiles in that manner. In other words, when someone comes to us to convert or anything like the Rambam says in Isaiah chapter 14, then we encourage him on by saying that only Israel has a chelik and a lambabas. In other words, midrashim are fine, but we do have a principle of ein mikra yotzei midei peshuto, that a Torah verse does not depart from its literal meaning. So that's my point here, that when we're sharing this with Gentiles, we have to make a distinction. Like Chazal always made a distinction between what's the Raita, what's the Rabbanan, between Minhag. But it seems that people nowadays make no distinction. Now, it's a nice story. The Rambam's son, Avraham ben Rambam, in his Hakdama to Medrash, Tagadata, says that people should not take Midrashim literally, especially when they contradict the literal text in the Torah. That anyone who says that they're completely disposable is a fool, but anyone who takes them completely literal is a fool also. That means there's what appears in the 5 books of Moses, clear, plain, the Peshat and the Chumash, and then there's Medrash. But it seems that when we're presenting this to Gentiles, we're overlooking the Peshat and we're going straight into Medrash. And I understand the Midrashim are there, or Agartha initially was there, to introduce the halacha. But nowadays, we have Gentiles putting their whole faith, their whole eternity, their whole understanding of God on a medrash that not all of Chazal agreed on, because Beis Shammai believed that no Gentile had a chelik on Haba, while Beis Hillel did, and the Rambam in one place says only Israel has a chelik on Haba in a Sirabiyah, and in Hilchos Malachim and Hilchos Tshuva, he says that Gentiles who keep the 7 laws of Noah do get a chelik on Haba. Now, the Rambam's important because he's a posek. He's bringing down both opinions, teaching us that there is no consensus on this. There's no consensus on metaphysical issues. But you mentioned on your post that we have a command to listen to the rabbis. Now, the way this is understood in terms of Lo Sasor, in Parashat Shoftim, we're commanded to heed the instruction, the actual physical halacha le'maaseh of the court, not metaphysical issues. In other words, anything of a metaphysical nature brought down by Chazal is considered agartha. Agartha means anything that's not legal in our text. In other words, it could be beautiful, it could be damaging.
I feel like I have to interrupt because at this point, unfortunately, there have come a few questions that I feel like I should address. But before going on, the questions become too many, and I can't respond to them.
Yeah, man,
I will say that, one, I think you're very, very shocked. You are correct in how to approach midrashim. You very much should be hesitant. You should be cautious. You should focus primarily on the pshat to understand. You are also correct to point out that we should not be taking midrashim as like pure philosophical conclusions and then using them like a hammer. I will push back on one particular point that I feel illustrates our difference of opinion. You asked a good question. I like this question. How can I sit here and say that the goyim can be good and partake of olam haba, however you want to define or describe that? As an aside, I find it somewhat strange that you're referencing olam haba when that's definitely not the Farish and the Sukkim. If you want to talk to any Karaites, you might know. Mm-hmm. But I'll leave that aside, because let's just be moda. You and I are fine with saying that there is an olam haba, that it is a Torah principle, and I'm sitting here saying that a Ben Noach gets it. He ends up in heaven, whatever you want to say, and seemingly the Rambam in places says that they don't. They have no chelet. I would respond to that and say that I'm actually teaching a conclusion that would be based on the Rambam's reading, and say that what he's really saying is that there's no predisposition towards Olam Haba if you're from the Goyim. Simply having the Sheva Mitzvot, like if you just don't murder someone throughout your life, that's not a very good guarantee that you're living the proper lifestyle. Most of the Sheva Mitzvot are really preventing bad actions. They're not, like, the closest you could get would be no avodah zarah, which again is then negative. The closest would be Mavarach Hashem, to reflect on the existence of God to some degree. And you could tell that to someone, hey, think about God, and that could be totally...
No, that's not one of the Sheva Mitzvot, brother.
Not to curse by God's name.
Birkas Hashem. In other words, not even to believe in God, but not in any way to dwell or to elevate His name, like just not the person.
Correct. You're right. It's even less than telling someone properly to think about God. Meaning it is a very, very remedial system. Now, I would read all of Chazal. I would probably say that Beis Shammai would agree. He would probably just use more strict language, although, he's dead, so I can't really ask them. Either way, I would say that most anyone would say that a simple person who's not a Jew can live a proper lifestyle and still be worthy of whatever it is we mean when we say Olam Haba. If a person is a kind person, a just person who takes care of the ger, the yasam, the amana, truly the Torah system is designed for man to live that way. It's not to say that if I'm not a Jew and I follow all of the mitzvahs which I am able to follow, meaning I take on sukkah, I bring karbanos, I do tefillah every day. All of these things will assist that person in attaining perfection and being a happy, fulfilled person as a bria of God. But
in theory, because we don't know. I mean, it's a suffix.
To some degree, you're right. I can't say for certain. I've never died, so I don't exactly know what it's like. But based on
but the Torah doesn't say it literally. It's literally not in the Torah. Now, you're right. The Olam Haba is also not literally in the Torah for Jews. But I'm saying amongst Chazal, it was unanimous, right? There was a famous statement of Kol Yisrael Leishlachem Chelik L'Olam Haba, but it never really said it unanimously about Gentiles. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying we have to separate what we know from what we don't know. In other words, we won't even eat a French fry if it doesn't have a reputable hashgacha. But we're going to offer this to Gentiles as an alternative to conversion. I'm not talking about all Gentiles. No. Okay. And not everyone should become Jewish, for sure. But if someone comes from Christianity or from a serious belief system that they already identify with Israel, drop JC and convert. That's it.
I will push back and say that pragmatically, I think that's a bad system because that could deter some people that, just really like pork. But I will explain how, I'm serious. Like some people that could just be, like I'm saying, obviously it's a little thing. But look, even the Jews in the Midbar, they complained when they were hungry. They had already received the Torah. They knew they were taking over the land. And they go, Moshe, we're so hungry. And Moshe gave up. Moshe said, God, just go ahead and kill them all.
You're right. I'm not talking about those people, by the way. Anyone who loves pork more than Torah, that's not my audience. I'm saying people who are serious should not be encouraged to some Judaism-like alternative form, no-white system. If you're serious about Judaism, convert. If you're not, then eat pork.
I have a sense that this analogy I'm about to give you will resonate. It sounds like if a guy wanted to convert and he showed up to you and he told you, tell me the Torah, I'll read the Lachas, you would shoo him away for being so disrespectful.
No, I emulate Hillel. Says he converted miyad. I mean,
but what's the real klipa of that story? I mean, the real mushal we're supposed to take away is that these guys did come aggressively. They came rude and disrespectfully to even insult the Torah. And Beis Shammai, being Beis Shammai, they truly wanted to respect the Torah. They said it's not proper for you to sit here and demand that I explain this vast, complicated, beautiful system while you stand on one foot. That is a rude request to ask of the greatest minds of our generation. And Beis Hillel, their reaction instead was to notice that there was a kernel of interest, to notice that there was some small thing that this person was interested in. And in that interest, they sparked a true passion. They said, I'll tell you, take care of other people. Don't do to others as you wouldn't have done to yourself. And what did those people do? They then converted.
No. It's the opposite. No. It says that he converted them first. First he converted them. And, if you notice, he didn't offer them an alternative. He didn't offer them an alternative to conversion, which is what happens today. It says he converted them and then he taught them.
I do want to say, one, I just want to say in general, I agree with you. It's not right to have someone show up at your door, say, I genuinely want to be Jewish, or I genuinely want to take on all of the mitzvot, and push them through hoops. I think that's crazy. The amount of...
Or offer them an alternative, correct?
Yes, I agree that all of those things are problematic. That's genuinely, that is, in my opinion, not taking care of the Ger, the Yasam, and the Almana. I genuinely agree with you on that. I'm simply saying that if a person on his own is saying, I do not want to be Jewish, but I really, really love Torah, and I truly love tefillah. I think the concept of tefillah is good, and I want to take that on and live with that in my life, or I want to live with brachos in my life. That is not something that I feel we should push back on, that we should limit to any degree.
Well, the Rambam says that they're able to take on as many mitzvahs as they want, and it's fine. Exactly. But however, in the back of our mind, we know that these people, although they say they love God and love Torah, don't. Just like if a Jew said, you know what, I love God and I love Torah, and all I want to say is Kaddish. That's the extent of my religious walk.
Here's another yesod. Yeah, are you familiar with the phrase, mitoch shelo lishma bo lishma?
Yeah.
As a principle in Judaism, we're aware that everyone, and I say this writ large, everyone pretty much has bad motives when it comes to Torah. Very few people are learning Torah because they genuinely simply want to understand the Ratzon Hashem. Most people, it's because my father does it, my friends do it, I do it because it's what I've always known. There are simplistic reasons, but Chazal are not critical of such things. Chazal do not say that your shelo lishma reason is we should push you away because you're not genuine. Why do you want to learn Torah? Because you want to be a big, important rabbi that people quote and love. That's a dumb reason. That's not a real reason to follow Torah. But if you do it, we're not going to stop you. Because we know that the nature of Torah is that it's a true system, and people who engage in it regularly, even for the wrong reasons, come to see its great beauty. So we're comfortable. We say, okay.
So even a Gentile? Even a Gentile?
I would say to anyone.
If a Gentile comes to you like he's not there yet, but you see great potential. It says the Rambam writes in a tshuva that he encourages people to teach Torah, to nurture him specifically. He makes a distinction with Muslims and draw them to our religion. So it seems like we agree on this, that you're okay, that if you see someone who's serious about Torah, in nudging him in the right direction. And those are the people I deal with. If someone's not serious, if someone really likes cheeseburgers over Torah, then I don't want them to be Jewish. All right, as a matter of fact, I don't...
See, that's where I would push back. I would say, look, if you really love all of the mitzvahs of Judaism and the cheeseburger's a deal breaker, then fine. Do all of the mitzvahs of Judaism. Be a Ben Noach. You can't keep Shabbos. I apologize. But you can do pretty much everything. Just, keep having your cheeseburgers. And one day, I feel confident that you will come to see that cooking a kid in the milk of its mother is not the best idea, and you yourself will happily take on this restriction. That would be my doubt.
I haven't met too many Gentiles like this who actually feel that they love hamburgers more or cheeseburgers more.
I know. To be fair, we're using a bit of an extreme circumstance. But
with anything, even keeping Shabbos or.
Well, no, I'll give you a much easier one. I mean, let's say a homosexual person. Homosexual person is now true, it's ushered to him by the Ben Noach standards as well. But meaning he looks at the Torah system and a rabbi tells him that this is a beautiful thing, that it'll improve his life. And to him, he says, no. I engage in my actions, and I like to have my freedom to do as I please. Such a person, if he genuinely is interested in all the rest of the Torah, why should we push him away? For all we know, if he studies, he will come to see that there's truth to the Torah, and he should even experiment with taking on certain restrictions that he doesn't want to take on.
Well, that's actually the halacha. The halacha is that if they come, that you tell them some of the light mitzvahs and not all of them. And then the Rambam says specifically, lest he turn from the good path back to the bad path. In other words, you don't have to be completely makabel mitzvahs to be Megayer. I mean, nowadays, to convert, you have to know more than the rabbi.
I know. I know.
But for sure.
Politics
so we have to.
Terrible.
It says that he quotes the Navi when the Navi says that when Israel was young, I loved him, and with bonds of love, I drew him to me. with how we treat someone who comes to convert. In other words, we have to be patient, we have to be loving. That's it. No, I agree. I go as far as encouraging people, specifically Christians, to consider following the proper derech and convert all the way. This is why I see
here's
this as a stumbling block.
That I'll say. I'm gonna interrupt you in order to agree with you because I'm a very rude person.
No, you're fine.
I would say also alternatively, even the exact opposite of what I just said. If you yourself, you happen to be a person, you are a person. If you happen to find tremendous success with leading people to understand the beauty of Torah by doing it even with like harshness, if you're a Beis Shammai type guy, and when you kick people away, it just makes them interested. Like it's very much, in my opinion, measured by the results. If you are able to trigger a response within a person and let them see the beauty of Torah, and maybe the derech for that is to push them away, then so be it. If it works, it works. Then that's a skill set that you have. Exactly. Meaning, the only reservation I have, and it probably comes from me, is that I find that if I push people away, often they'll take that as like, okay, good, then I'm done. That settles that problem. And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm simply saying that people are multitudes, and a lot of people are going to respond differently to different things. And I wouldn't be so quick to push away someone who his objection to Torah is as simplistic as a cheeseburger, because I don't know that guy. It could be that that guy's later going to become Rabbi Akiva, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. All right, great. So we agree.
Yeah, very nice.
Great. All right.
Well, if you want to talk about any other topics, I'm more than interested. I talk.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of Kabbalah, by the way, or at least taking it literally, just because.
You know what? I would love to. I have a gripe. This is just like a bone to pick I have with Art Scroll. Have you ever seen the Art Scroll's Ramban on Al Chumash?
No.
It is frustrating to me because they selectively translate. Like, they just don't translate the Kabbalah. And like, okay, I'm not a big Kabbalah guy. I don't really study Kabbalah. And I think that most often what people term Kabbalah is written by a thing that probably wasn't written by Rabbi Asher Meza, even though they'd like to think that it was. I don't usually do it. But like, I like the Ramban. The Ramban is like clearly a Chacham. I've loved his Parish on Chumash. And honestly, I mean, like, I'm a big fan of the Rambam. I really like Maimonides instead. But the Ramban
it's a different world.
It's better than that. He's just a poet. He's a better writer. He's such a better writer than the Rambam. The Rambam is.
You mean the Ramban's a poet? The Ramban.
The Ramban, Nachmanides.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His interweaving of psukim, his slight alterations to reference ideas from multiple psukim, and also his reading of.
He thinks he's a poet sometimes. I have a video on caviar, because I'm trying to push for the whole notion that caviar, even the black caviar, is kosher, right? But it was the Ramban in, I think it's in Vayera. He took it upon himself to classify Snapir V'Kaskasat on his own, and to say that this is a scale and this is not a scale. He decided he was a posek, and then 99% of the Jewish world jumped, on his bandwagon. But the Rambam never mentions it. He never outlaws, swordfish and other stuff. So
interesting.
I like the Ramban, but he's not a posek.
No, I mean he is a posek sometimes.
He never wrote a code of halacha.
I mean, what you're saying might be true. Like, we've had a Masorah for 3,000 years now. Things seep in and fall away. Like, it happens. It's not ideal, but it happens. The reason we don't particularly care is that the true Masorah, the real thing that isn't distorted, is the methodology, the way to follow Taryag Mitzvot and to interpret the Pesukim. That's why I like highlighted the pasuk of follow the rabbis if they say left is right and right is left, because the Torah system sort of crumbles instantly the second anyone
can say that, by the way.
however they please.
Now, according to Ramban, the Ramban there interprets it like that. It says don't stray from the right or to the left, because there's just a phrase that says that even if they tell you that your right is left or your left is right, you're still supposed to follow them. But then there's a Yerushalmi that says the opposite. In the Secretariat, it says that they tell you that your right is left, don't follow them, because everyone's accountable to Hashem, like, on their own. This whole thing of hiding behind your Rebbe. So, whatever.
Oh,
But
I you were going somewhere with that.
how do you define Masorah?
Okay, well, I would say the Masorah, there's a few different ways to define it. I would say primarily with the Torah, when it was given to Moshe, panim al panim, face to face, Moshe dictated the Torah directly. He was also enforced with interpreting the Torah. He had to explain it because there's a lot of stuff going on in the Torah that's not explained. I
have a class on it, by the way, on what I think Masorah means, but I'm just curious what you think it means.
Okay, I'll tell you how I understand it. To me, it seems that the Masorah is, again, a little bit of a history lesson in terms of when God gave the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu with very specific words that he then gave him also a methodology for which to read and understand them so that he could explain it to the masses. And that was kept as an oral tradition, which Moshe gave over to Yehoshua and then onward through the generations to the wisest members of each generation. And they were empowered with reading and interpreting the Torah. It's a somewhat elitist system where we put our wisest at the top in terms of authority, and then they instruct us as to the proper way to fulfill the Torah edicts. And then what a lot of people refer to as the Masorah is the historic results of particular generations' conclusions with regards to interpreting those psukim. But strictly speaking, halachically, realistically, we could very much today reinstitute a Sanhedrin if all of the Chachmei Yisrael were to appoint one. If you hold by the Rambam Svara, then there would be a full Sanhedrin, and that Sanhedrin could even go so far as to uproot the conclusions of previous Sanhedrin, so long as they were greater in Chachma and number, which is pretty easy because we know a lot of things today that we did not know back then. So there would be multiple things that could be changed.
So let me chime in here. You said a lot of stuff that I agree with, and some things I'm not so bored on. I love that interpretation. I mean, there's many different ways to go in terms of when someone says Masorah. I dialogue with Christians a lot, and I compare it to like when Christians use the Holy Spirit, right? So when a Jew doesn't know how to respond on why he does what he does, you'll say it's my Masorah, and there, end of discussion. Same thing with Christians. Why do you do what you do? They're like, the Holy Spirit told. Like, who am I to argue with your Masorah? Who am I to argue with the Holy Spirit? But that is for sure the Rambam's understanding. In like Hilchos Yesod Torah, what he considers Torah Sheba'al Peh is really the 13 principles, not Torah Sheba'al Peh specifically, but what was given in Har Sinai, apart from Halacha Moshe Sinai, which he limits to 30 halachas. His understanding is that it was the 13 principles of exegesis, which is what was given on Har Sinai and passed down through the elders, as it says in the Hakdama of Mishnah Torah and Park Avos. That's for sure the Rambam's verifying it, guys.
I would simply say that I'm not as much a chacham as the Rambam, so I don't understand or know the Torah as well as he did. So I wouldn't be so bold as to say it's literally these 13, but I'm not going to argue on him because he's smarter than I am. If he really thinks that it's all of those 13, maybe for me the primary point is that the tools and methodology of interpretation is what they had and we have had in an unbroken chain sense.
So that's another way to interpret Masorah also, an understanding of a family or of a tribe, let's say, because there's another source that apart from the 13 principles, there were the 7 principles of Yishmael that in some way predated themselves. I mean, how could it have been given on Mount Sinai? The way that rationalists that people typically use the term Masorah is a group's or tribes or families' understanding on the ambiguous statements that have been documented in what we call Torah Sheba'al Peh. Like, in other words, the Mishnah Torah is the Rambam's understanding, but why does Shulchan Aruch use the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam? The Rambam said he disagreed with the Rif around 5 or 6 times, but in terms of the Rosh, he had a completely different Masorah on how we poskin what to include and what to exclude. Even the Ramban has a different enumeration for Sefer Mitzvot. But in terms of establishing a Sanhedrin, so the Rambam writes in his Perush Mishnayot as well as in his Hilchos Sanhedrin, he says that it seems to me. In other words, this is only his opinion, right? Nowhere by Chazal does it say how to establish a Sanhedrin. So now I know that the Jews ran with that.
It does. Huh? I think it does say how to establish a Sanhedrin. It is a little less clear as to what to do once the Masorah is intentionally severed in terms of smicha. So that's the bigger question. How do you get smichas Moshe Rabbeinu back?
All right, but you can't have a Beis Din without an actual dayan. I mean, someone who has smicha.
Well,
Right.
Right. The reason I find the Rambam Svara persuasive that is a good methodology is because if truly you did have all of the Chachmei Yisrael appoint one person and say, yes, this person's derech is proper. When he teaches Torah, it is an accurate representation of Torah's Moshe, then that really is nothing more than the best mind we have to offer understanding the Torah. And that person is seemingly de facto has Torah's Moshe because all the Chachamim agree. That's why the Svarah makes sense to me, at least.
But regarding Dinei Nefashos, I mean, you're putting someone to death, and you don't have smicha going back to Moshe Rabbeinu. I never saw the need for another Sanhedrin. If people don't keep the halachas that are on the books now,
I
very
much disagree.
I mean, apart from Agunot, and there are many prestigious rabbis who found ways around it, there's just no consensus to move forward with it. I think if people just kept the halachas on the books, Israel could prosper. But if we don't even keep the halachas we have codified now, who's to say whether we're going to keep laws put together by some new Sanhedrin made up by Chabad, Baba, Sabra?
Well, hold on there. You're being fairly restrictive in your imagination of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin might matir a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know. Now, I don't really push one way or the other because to me, it's more, I view it as, look, I'm a Sunni Jew. I follow the Torah as it's commanded to me. I see a commandment to make courts in my gates, and I see that we have no courts in our gates. So, I mean, you have a good question in general. Like when Rabbi Akiva is sitting on a beis din to decide that person should go to death or not, he is not Moshe Rabbeinu. He has never met Moshe Rabbeinu. He came about thousands of years after Moshe Rabbeinu, and he wasn't even raised in the culture of Moshe Rabbeinu. He came to it later in life. And he is sitting there deciding whether or not this person, when he picked up a stick on a certain day of the week, whether or not this person should be killed. And
because the smicha is a critical component.
That's true, but in the end, he is still a human being. Like, it's not like a magic power that he has that now he can read the Torah. It's a legal authority that we grant him to say, yes, this person's application of the laws is bad, and the best result in this particular circumstance is to kill a person. That's a bold statement for anyone to decide. Just because someone put their hands on you and said that you're a wise person, it's still a big deal to consign someone to death. So
it's a process set up by Hashem. I mean, he says that he's going to put on the elders what he put on Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but if God sanctioned it in such a manner, then that's the way it is.
I'm saying that, I know, but I'm saying a little more. I'm saying that God is a just, kind God, and that when he sanctions the system, it's designed for reason. It's designed to make sense. We don't just want to kill people for picking up sticks. Meaning, the reason we want the Chachmei Yisrael, the wisest of our generation, is that is the best chance we have of understanding what the heck the Torah is saying. The Torah says a lot of things. And sometimes
I'm not disagreeing with that.
And
the Rambam, in the second paragraph of Hilchos Ma'amrim, he says something like this. He says that for Kofrim, that you don't need a beis din, you don't need Adam. He says that it's a mitzvah to put him to death.
We also
famous story
let's just slow down.
Of like Rabbi Wasserman, right? So Rabbi Wasserman, he lived during the Holocaust, and supposedly he killed a guy in the mikvah who was like an informant, because he felt that there was a liability to the Jewish people, right?
Sure, that's understandable. Right, I mean, so when in some ways, I guess you could call me rationalistic or pragmatic, but to some degree, I agree with you. There is something special to getting smicha from Moshe Rabbeinu, to have the wisest person of the previous generation say that you are to be the wisest person of this generation. But to me, the fundamental question is this person the wisest person of the generation? And if we have all of the Chachmei Yisrael to agree that such a person typifies proper interpretation of the Torah, the Svara seems sound to me that person de facto is Smichas Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the one that we should be listening to.
All right. So that being said, in reality, I don't see anyone alive today. But the last nut of the Sanhedrin was Adam Steinsaltz, a Lubavitcher, right? I mean, that's all you need, like a Yechi,
I know. And
posters of Yechi, like all over the third temple.
Hey, this is my own personal kick. I really want there to be a Sanhedrin. Just nobody wants to ask me about it. But the thing is, I do think that there is a mitzvah to make a Sanhedrin. I think that you could say that Anis Rahman Patre, surely it would be very difficult to get all the rabbis together. But at the same point, I really don't think the people particularly ask for it. They don't want it. And I was reviewing the Rambam.
Doesn't the Rambam bring down the Sefer Mitzvahs, by the way?
What did he say?
No, he doesn't say that it's a mitzvah to make another Sanhedrin.
That might be in the Sefer Mitzvot. I was referring to the Yad HaChazaka. He definitely listed as a mitzvah in the Koseres as the Yad HaChazaka. He says one of the things is to create courts in your gates. But one of the depictions he gives at the end of chapter 3, I believe it's like halacha 10, it's like the last halacha, he says something to the effect of, it was the practice of the day that even if you were a great man, the wisest in your city, and you knew that no one was better to be a judge, even then, you'd still withhold yourself and go like, you know what, I'm an honor, like, other people can decide, I would say. And in truth, that is very much the derech of Chachamim, that they would never think to say, I am the person that should be the arbiter.
I think it's Shulchan Malacha is not completely a halacha sefer. It's dealing with Yemus Mashiach.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
so this is why.
I know. I'm aware that Yad HaChazaka is a little different than simple halacha sefer. But the Rambam does bring it down as a mitzvah. He does say mitzvah to put your gates in your city. I'm simply saying that what's interesting is that he puts down that the Chachamim never sought to be Dayanim, and it was only because the people in the villages pushed them and said, please, you're the wisest person we know. Would you please lead us in the Sanhedrin? Only then would they go to join the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim. And
so the Rambam in Hilchos Sanhedrin says that you don't actually need smicha to be in the Sanhedrin. But
that's true.
In the court, well, there has to be someone with smicha. You could be an aide, you could be some quasi-dayan. You're not going to have the final say.
But that, again, with my formulation, that doesn't make sense. Meaning, if I were to establish Sanhedrin, and never was there ever gained a consensus of a single person being correct, then what good is that? There's no consensus. Like, I just disagree with that guy, so it doesn't matter what the Sanhedrin says. So
there's different Sanhedrins. I mean, that's a base in a gadol. You know, like a base in katana is also considered a Sanhedrin. You know.
I know, and we have those today. We have some small Sanhedrins, but you see that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Once you have that one guy, once you have a guy that everyone points to, because like if my Rebbe, I know who my Rebbe is. I know his name. I know his address. If he were to say, follow this guy, I would listen. I would say, okay, I'm going to follow that guy. My Rebbe thought about it, and he considered that this person is good. And if everyone had the same perspective of my greatest rabbi says this guy's good to go, then that's it. No one's going to argue on a Sanhedrin that guy is sitting on. Because that guy is
the understanding of who Mashiach is. I mean, Rabbi Akiva did it with Bar Kokhba, right? I mean, he said he was a guy and everyone jumped on board. But in terms of just who you're going to allow in areas of like Dina Mamanos and Dina Nefashos.
I agree. I fully understand the reservations everyone has. Anyone you give this kind of power to has tremendous power. That guy can define the Masorah. That's a tremendous power. I can understand the reservation and concern. My biggest objection is not the reservations or really the rabbis for being careful. It's more that the people don't seem to care. That's what bugs me. Like, I feel like the people should be asking their rebbes every day or so, hey, how's it going? Did you appoint anybody today? Like, have you found someone that's worthy? Meaning, like, it doesn't seem like it's a general concern. It doesn't seem like anyone's really worried about whether or not anyone's working on building a consensus.
I don't think we agree on this. The notion of building some consensus that there has to be a base in a gadol and appointing someone, getting all the chachamim to give one person smicha, that's still just the Rambam's opinion. Also, but they are going to feel like they're not able, because it says greater number and greater wisdom. No one's going to say, because we have this notion of Yeridat Hadorot, that everyone's going to think they're not worthy, that they're never going to be able to abolish
that's not exactly true. In terms of the particular knowledge necessary to overrule it, it really just needs to be a new fact. Like the Gemara treats that as a very low bar. You literally need to have one extra member and also have a little bit of extra information. And now I agree with you. Now here's the thing I really want to say. You're right. I would be cautious. If I were sitting on such a Sanhedrin, I would not be quick to say undo the Gezerah of Muktzah. I wouldn't say, hey, you know what? We can just stick with the Malachas. I would be very, very cautious before ignoring the conclusion of the Chachamim. And the truth is, no, I know, but the truth is...
In terms of Muktzah, because I have my own view, on what's muksa is. I mean, typically a Rabbi Soloveitchik held that muksa is only what's actually brought down by Chazal. It's not, I mean, nowadays it's like anything not useful on Shabbos is classified as muksa. I mean, there are no classifications. There's
that was more the
says.
original version, right? The Nevi'im set it up as everything.
This is Nehemiah. It's like invented muksa or whatever. You know, but supposedly like, it's just what Chazal said. Nowadays we have everyone playing the posik, everyone playing Tana here, telling you what your muksa is and what Shabbos stick is and all these subjective areas.
I'm not trying to delve into any arguments. I'm simply saying if Chachamim wanted to say writ large, however you define muksa, that it's gone, which they could do, that's within their power as a Beis Din, I would not think that Chachamim would be so quick to do such a thing. I think that Chachamim are generally cautious, and if the system is currently working, they're not quick to remove things. Meaning they would only remove certain isurim that were, say, rabbinically instituted, if they felt that that was going to contribute to the world better following Torah. But they would be cautious. The Chachamim are a cautious lot. They're not quick to overrule the considerations of previous generations. That's where the whole custom of following the Gemara, closing sort of the book on the Mishnah, and then closing the book on the Gemara, and then all of the Rishonim simply interpreting those things. You know, there was the reason for that. The Chachamim don't want to throw away the previous conclusions because, sure, I might have an idea that my concept of Sukkah is better than the Chachamim in the Gemara, but do you really think that you're better than there? I know Chacham really thinks that.
So with all you said now, all this places you in a box. But I consider myself in this box as well. I consider myself a halachic purist. I do what my community does. I don't want you to think I'm being too tzibur.
Sure, right.
But in terms of, I think it's important for people to know the distinction between what's the actual halacha and what's the minhag, right? I mean, for example, if you really start breaking down everything by those terms or by those categories, you're probably going to throw away 70% of practical Judaism nowadays. From being in a state of availance or in the spheres, even the 3 weeks, you know, there's so many things that are built off of fluff.
That's true. I wouldn't be so quick to call it fluff, though. You see that Chazal were fairly strong about Minhag Yisrael. Minhag Yisrael is, I believe, stronger than a Durabanan.
All right.
I'm going to clarify, because Minhag Yisrael is fairly rare. Most of what you're talking about are personal Minhagim, which are not Minhag Yisrael. Like, for example, the 3 weeks, which are done differently by the Jews from Sfard versus the Jews from Europe.
Yeah, but nowhere by Chazal what does it tell you to be in a state of availance for 3 weeks? It says the week of the 9 days only.
Right, but then Minhagim develop. I wouldn't be so quick to throw away.
So there's what we differ. That's one area, or one other area where we differ. In terms of minhag, I know the whole understanding of minhag Yisrael Torah, right? However, the Rambam writes in the first paragraph of Hilchos Mamrim that these are only the minhagim developed by the Beis Din Hagadol. In other words, there's still checks and balances in minhagim. It's not that people started wearing black hats or a pancake hat, and that's your minhag, right? So that's another word that's been sort of perverted.
That's true. That's true. I agree with you, and that's a very clear distinction between the minhagim passed by Sanhedrin versus the minhagim that just kind of developed. But what the nation does is also very relevant because sometimes that can even undo Durabanan. If the rabbi set up a prohibition and the people just don't follow it, if they don't, because it was a bad law, it was such that the people couldn't handle it. At that time, it actually undoes the law. And it goes
the same way with minhagim. If the court established a minhag that doesn't catch on, supposedly it dies off. See, the thing is, minhagim are derabanan. It's still coming from Chazal. It's still under lo sasor.
Well, sometimes they don't, right? Because sometimes they come from foreign places, the Jews really.
Yeah, but they're established by the courts. In other words, what makes it binding is that there's a court that will adjudicate you not performing that law.
Okay.
The problem is that people don't know the difference nowadays, right? And everyone, there's a huge gamification.
Right. People know a lot more about Hasidim having payas and shtreimel and bekasha far more than whether or not a three-walled sukkah is kosher. Which is a strange thing. Three-walled sukkah, that's black letter law. It's pretty easy, but you don't see that as much as you see Hasidim wearing shtreimel. So,
no, I appreciate communal law. I tell people, do what they do in your community. Don't stand out, right? Clearly,
that's
however.
The Portman and Seymour. You have to also.
But know the difference.
To that.
Know the difference. Nowadays.
For example, Shlisel Challah. What would you say? Shlisel Challah. Everyone does Shlisel Challah. But there's a lot of pedigree to say that
not everyone.
Came in.
I mean, if I see them do that.
Of course, exactly. Not everybody. That's very good.
Right. Yeah, but
meaning
there's communal law,
right?
And there's Torah law clearly, but nowadays people make no distinction. For example, there's rabbis nowadays who'll say Torah teaches and they'll quote the Tanya or they'll quote the Zohar, right?
Right.
That's a big problem. I mean, but to be
right,
Baal Tosif, to add stuff, not just the Torah to the top, but the Torah about peh.
Here's the thing. I 100% agree with you. Like, you're right. It shouldn't be quoting Tanya or Zohar and saying that's quote unquote Torah. But at the same time, I know they're not really adding on to the Torah. They're not really saying, like, here, this line is in the 5 books of Moses or in any of the Divrei Nevi'im.
Are you kidding?
Or in any of Tanakh.
I mean, all these midrashim, that's what they do. I mean, they say...
The midrashim is difficult because that's Chazal explaining
how... the Zohar is a book of midrashim. I mean, there's midrashim in
Zohar is whatever the Zohar is. I'm not sure what the Zohar is.
All right. Also, there's many people who talk about the Zohar nowadays. But the halach is that you got to put on tefillin during Chol Hamoed, right? And the Zohar says not to do it, right? And everyone, the vast majority of Jews don't put on tefillin during Chol Hamoed. I mean, there's a lot of things that people talking about the Zohar.
Well, I understand it, though. There is a basis for that. Like, there is a halachic basis. I don't know if that's giving psak strictly based on the Zohar. I mean, like,
it's quoted by the Arizal based on the Zohar. So the Arizal says, well, the Chol Hamoed itself is an oath. So why should you need another oath on your head?
Right.
I mean, that's not enough for the Arizal.
That does sound like
he's not a Tana. I mean, he's not an Amara. I mean, for him to make such a...
That's fair. Well, the truth is, that's a very particular halachic question. I'd have to look into it and see. But I can say that I would hold as a general rule that you can't give psak on the Torah that is not based on the Torah. Like, you can't say, well, homosexuality is so common nowadays, so we're going to disregard that pasuk. Or you can't say, yeah, Avodah Zarah was common back in the day, but it doesn't apply at all today anymore, so we're just going to undo that restriction and go ahead, bow down to an idol. It's meaningless. Anyway.
All right, cool,
meaning I would simply say you can't disregard things so quickly. Like, if what you're saying is true and that's how we interpret it, then okay, there's a problem there. What's it called? I have to look at it inside, see what it really says. But on the face, it doesn't sound crazy to have a...
It's not just that. There's a lot of practices in the Jewish people that kind of have no real mucker for them.
That's definitely true. That has always been true. We are the ones that invented the golden calf. We're also the ones that went back to Baal Peor time and time again. Just because the nation's doing it doesn't mean that it's right. But, we also, we want to be careful not to, insult people. But, we also, we want